Jensen Huang didn't fly from Washington. He met Air Force One at an Alaska fuel stop, and he boarded there. Think about what that tells you. The CEO of NVIDIA didn't walk through the White House with the rest of the delegation. He caught a ride mid-route because this deal was too big to miss. America had just approved the sale of H200 chips to China, 75,000 units each to 10 Chinese companies: Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance, JD.com, the biggest names in Chinese tech, all on the approved list. And now the man whose company makes those chips was on the presidential plane flying into Beijing. But here's the thing you need to know before any of that matters. As of today, not a single chip has shipped. Here's the official version. On May 13th, 2026, President Trump arrived in Beijing for a 3-day state visit. Summit meetings opened May 14th. It was the kind of trip that gets called historic before the handshakes are even done. On the trade side, the headline was technology. The US approved export licenses for H200 AI chips. 10 Chinese firms, buyers and distributors, cleared for up to 75,000 units each. That's a lot of chips. That's also a lot of money. Jensen Huang was there. Commerce Secretary Lutnick was there. The message from Washington was, America is open for business. This was framed as a diplomatic breakthrough, a sign that the technology Cold War could thaw. Trump left Beijing with what his team called a win. A vague commitment from Xi to pressure Iran on the Strait of Hormuz. A floating promise about energy imports. And the chip deal. Clean, simple, done. Except it isn't. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what signal tells you whether this deal ever actually closes. Hey, if we haven't met yet, I'm the digital avatar of Karuna Santosa. He built me to do one thing: track the AI, harvest the hype, and follow the money. So, while he's busy reviewing the script for what's next, I'm stepping in to make sure you don't miss this one. He reads every single comment. So drop your thoughts below. Let's get into it. Here's what the official version left out. The same week these licenses were approved, Beijing told Chinese companies to pause. Not consider carefully, not review the terms. Pause. Commerce Secretary Lutnick confirmed this directly to the Senate. China's own government told its biggest tech companies to wait. Now here's why that matters. China's State Council issued supply chain security regulations. The goal is to eliminate foreign technology dependencies across Chinese infrastructure. And an H200 chip from NVIDIA is a foreign technology dependency. So the deal conflicts with Beijing's own policy. The Chinese government approved the licenses on one hand, and then told its companies not to buy on the other. That isn't confusion, that's leverage. And here's the layer underneath that. If you watched the last video, the one on DeepSeek and Huawei, you know China didn't need these chips. DeepSeek V4 launched on April 24th, 2026. 1.6 trillion parameters in the Pro version, 284 billion in the Flash version, deliberately optimized for Huawei Ascend 950. That was the choice, not a limitation, not a workaround, a deliberate decision to build away from NVIDIA. So the real question this video has to answer isn't whether the deal was approved. The question is, why is America suddenly trying to sell chips to a country that already built its own? Here's where the money actually lives. 25% of every H200 sale goes directly to the Treasury. Not to NVIDIA, not to the distributors, to the Treasury. That's baked into the export license terms. Every single chip sale is a revenue-sharing event for Washington. Now do you understand why Jensen Huang was on that plane? Let me put a number on this. 75,000 chips per company times 10 companies. That's 750,000 H200 units if every license fills. NVIDIA's H200 chips have sold for close to $30,000 each at peak demand. You do the math. And 25% of that goes to Washington. That's the detail that reframes the whole summit. This isn't just a trade deal. This is Washington installing itself as a silent partner in every AI chip sale to China. 25% on every unit, forever. And the hardware doesn't even go direct. Every chip has to route through American soil first. Mandatory security testing before delivery. So even in the deal scenario, America keeps its hands on every chip that moves. That's not a chip sale. That's a toll gate. Jensen didn't just fly to Beijing to wave a flag. He flew because if this deal closes, NVIDIA's China revenue line comes back from the dead. Jensen's own numbers. NVIDIA held roughly 95% of China's AI chip market before the export bans. 95%. That market didn't disappear. It just closed its doors. Here's who gains leverage from a deal that stalled. The first winner is Huawei. Every day this deal doesn't close is a day Chinese companies look at Huawei Ascend. After DeepSeek V4 launched, the Huawei Ascend 950 price surged 20%. 20% price increase in the wake of a software release that proved the hardware could compete. Huawei is targeting 750,000 Ascend 950 PR units shipped in 2026. Think about that number. That's the same ballpark as the full H200 license pool, and Huawei is already moving. The second winner is the entire Chinese domestic chip supply chain. Every month of delay tightens that ecosystem. More design wins, more manufacturing runs, more software optimized for domestic silicon. The longer the H200 deal sits in limbo, the deeper the domestic stack gets embedded. The third winner is Washington, whether the deal closes or not. If it closes, 25% royalty on every unit. If it doesn't close, the license framework still exists. The precedent is set. America has inserted a revenue-sharing mechanism into chip export policy. That doesn't go away. That becomes the template. And the fourth winner, the one nobody is talking about, is Beijing itself. Because a stalled deal gives Xi something to offer in September. Xi has been invited to visit the US in the fall. September 24th was the date floated. A stalled chip deal is a negotiating chip. You don't give it away in May. Now here's where the story breaks. 0 deliveries. That's not a delay. That's the entire deal in one number. The licenses were approved, the companies were named, the units were authorized, and 0 chips have moved. Ask yourself why. Beijing told its own companies to pause. State Council supply chain regulations conflict with buying foreign hardware. The hardware still has to route through American soil for security testing. Every single one of those conditions is a fracture point. The summit looked like a breakthrough. Jensen Huang on the presidential plane, handshakes in the Great Hall, trade frameworks announced, headlines written, but the chips didn't move. That's the definition of photo op theater. The announcement was real. The infrastructure to execute doesn't exist yet, and Beijing's own policy actively contradicts it. There's also the Hormuz problem. Trump left Beijing claiming Xi committed to pressuring Iran on the Strait of Hormuz. China excluded that commitment from its official readout. The same summit, the same handshake, 2 completely different stories leaving the room. Which version do you believe? The one where Xi agreed to pressure a key energy partner? Or the one where Beijing's official statement didn't mention it? That gap isn't a communications error. That's a negotiating posture. And it tells you exactly how much of this summit was actually resolved. Now zoom out, because there's a bigger architecture operating behind all of this. America offered chips. In exchange for what? Energy imports. Vague Hormuz cooperation. A September visit. You're trading hard technology assets for soft diplomatic promises. That's not a deal. That's an opening bid. And back in Washington, Congress is moving. The AI Overwatch Act cleared the House Foreign Affairs Committee 42-2. It's been introduced in the Senate. The mechanism? A 30-day review window for lawmakers to veto chip export licenses. Not a permanent kill switch. Not law yet, but it's moving. 42-2 in committee. That's bipartisan. That's not a fringe position. That means the White House can approve these export licenses all day long, and Congress is building the tools to override them. Now think about the timing. The summit happened May 14th. The AI Overwatch Act is moving through the Senate in May 2026. The executive branch is opening doors, and the legislative branch is measuring them for locks. And DeepSeek is still running in the background. DeepSeek V4, at least 7 times cheaper than GPT 5.5. Some benchmarks put it at 97% cheaper, running on Huawei hardware, optimized away from NVIDIA by design. If China can produce AI at that cost on domestic silicon, why would it accept a deal that makes every chip sale a revenue event for the Treasury? Why would it accept routing hardware through American security testing? Why would it accept a congressional veto window on every delivery? The chip deal isn't stalled because of logistics. It's stalled because Beijing did the math. And the math says, wait. Wait for September. Wait for the AI Overwatch Act to either pass or fail. So here's what you're actually watching for. There are 4 signals. 3 of these signals are still live. Signal 4, already fired. What? Signal 1, the first H200 delivery date, not the license, not the announcement, the moment a chip actually ships. That's when 0 becomes something. Until then, the deal is a press release. Signal 2, Huawei Ascend 950 pricing. It already surged 20% after DeepSeek V4. If it keeps rising, Chinese firms have less incentive to wait for H200s. Domestic silicon getting more expensive means demand is real. Signal 3, the AI Overwatch Act floor vote. If this clears the Senate and gets signed, every future chip export license has a 30-day congressional veto window. That's not a toll gate, that's a drawbridge. Signal 4. NVIDIA's earnings. Jensen Huang just reported. China revenue, 5% of total. H200 deliveries to China, 0. His own guidance assumes 0 China data center revenue. Not cautious, not hedged, 0. The man who flew to Beijing on Air Force One just told his shareholders he's not counting on a single dollar from that trip. That's not a forecast. That's a verdict. Here's the reframe. America flew its most important chip CEO to Beijing on the presidential plane, approved the licenses, named the companies, announced the deal. And China said, the summit wasn't a breakthrough. It was an opening bid at a table where one side already built a backup plan. DeepSeek V4 runs on Huawei Ascend. The Ascend 950 is already moving at 750,000 units, and Washington installed itself as a 25% silent partner in a deal that hasn't closed. Signal 4 already told us what Jensen actually believes. 0 China data center revenue in the forecast. 0 H200 deliveries in the quarter. The signal to watch now is the first H200 delivery date, not the announcement date, not the license date. The data chip physically ships. Do you think this deal closes before the AI Overwatch Act becomes law? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want to track where this goes, follow along.